Hey, so thanks for joining us today on this episode of Feng Shui It. Today in the studio we have Will LeStrange here that's talking with us about Feng Shui. But before we get started on that interview, I want you to press that subscribe button. You don't want to miss any episode of this show, so when you hit that subscribe button, you'll get notifications when we're popping new information there. Right here below in the description section, you'll also see a link to both our Facebook page and our website. So to get more information about this guest for today, you can click on that and get that information. All right, so let's get started. Will, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
I am excited to have you here because before we get started talking about what is Feng Shui, the reason I'm going to let my audience know why I'm so excited, because I've worked with you for quite some time with as a consultant for my own personal Feng Shui business. As an educator, you've taught me, more than I could ever even think of learning. So for that, I'm excited to have you here on the show. All right. Before we talk about the details of Feng Shui, I kind of want to give a background on you. Because you provide a holistic Feng Shui, a group of services, because you don't just do one service. I mean, there's a whole host of things that you incorporate with your work. And I mean, you've got a background in construction, education, holistic healthcare, design, music, organic agriculture, and just all kinds of things. You, since 1995, has run an international Feng Shui design consultancy, and you work with clients all over the world, okay? And we're gonna get into that all over the world thing a little bit later on. But you're originally from the UK, and you're here in the States now. So how did you discover Feng Shui?
How did I discover Feng Shui? Feng Shui sort of discovered me, actually, I think. Well, first of all, I grew up in England, and my dad ran a construction business. And so from my earliest memory was walking in and out of these really old buildings where he'd be there with his team of guys, renovating, fixing these ancient buildings. And they were ancient, some of them. You know, in Britain we've got some very, very old buildings.
Right.
And so, and I was just as a child, and I think any child would experience this, you're sort of very aware of, things that are going on around you. And so I grew up and I apprenticed with my dad doing this. So I understood how buildings were put together. I had to take them apart and put them back together again, how to design them. That was just in my blood. That was just part of growing up. Then also the other side of my family were farmers. So weekend jobs, when I was at school, I didn't actually, as a young kid, I didn't work with my dad. I worked on the family farm. And when I was 16, I had a really bad accident on the farm. A tractor rolled over and crushed me. And I nearly died as a result of that experience. And that near-death experience sort of opened something up in me. It was I don't quite like to use the word psychic. I think that comes with a bit of baggage, that term. But certainly a sort of a sixth sense, I would say, or a heightened sense of things of our feeling world. So you've got this sort of sensitive son of a builder.
Right.
That was it. A sense, an energy-sensitive son of a builder. So I felt then the energy in buildings. What I'd experienced as a kid, I now had a sort of a deeper understanding for. Because I think we all have this ability to feel what's going on around us if we just give ourselves the time and the space and the moment to really just tune into what's going on around us. If we can find a language that helps to describe that, we can then make a sense of it, and then we can communicate it with one another. So really what I do is all of that, I then ran into Feng Shui later through traditional Chinese medicine, because I had about 15 years of chronic illness as a result of the accident. So all through my 20s, when I was a musician playing professionally in London, I was doing Tai Chi, I was trying to improve my posture because things were pretty messed up. I had a lot of internal injuries and stuff. My diet had to change. Just the way I sort of functioned had to change, really. So at that time, this is back in the 80s, and so in England then, all of what we take for granted now as alternative or complementary practices, they were only just coming out of the woodwork then. It was just getting started. So I would say for even some of those practitioners, I was kind of their first client or their guinea pig. So you name it, the things that you focus on in this show, which, by the way, I think is a tremendous show. I think what you're doing is just amazing, getting this message out to so many people.
Thank you.
That there are so many alternatives. We're not stuck with one thing, that we have options.
There's a lot
and
of
the
options.
options are these holistic approaches that can really help. And that's what I discovered in London, that there were these other ways. I would go and see my regular doctor, and he couldn't really help me. He'd run tests and go, well, we don't see anything, but I still feel terrible.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, what can I do? And, you know, go home, take an aspirin, and have a hot bath.
Right.
Well, that didn't do it. So you name it, chiropractor, osteopath, homeopath, hands-on healer, psychic healer, you know, all of these different practitioners, body workers, Reiki, you name it. I was on the front end of that as a young man, and felt the benefit of some of those. Some of those worked for me, some of those didn't.
Right.
So that exploded some of the mythology around it and some of the kind of woo-woo stuff around it. You find out what works for you, and then it's not woo-woo, it's just appropriate to your life and the way you want to be. So I ran into traditional Chinese, well, from Tai Chi, trying to improve my posture. I realized that that was part of a whole tradition, a way of cultivating energy and health from China that went back 4,000 years, and that was connected deeply with their whole world view of health and well-being. So you had acupuncture and moxibustion and massage and Tai Chi, which was their physiotherapy. You had meditation was a form of psychotherapy in old China. Then you had things like diet. They would look at your diet to change you, and a Chinese doctor would also want to come and look at where you lived, because they would put that into the picture,
perspective, right.
the perspective of your overall health picture, because you could be too drafty, too dry, you know, too high up on them, too windy, too swampy. It could be something for you. So that would have to factor into your picture of health. So I ran into all of that as a young man living in London, and then realized that what this eighth branch of the Chinese medicine was Feng Shui.
Right.
And so suddenly I had this language to explain what I'd been kind of feeling.
Which you already knew to be true.
Well, experience, yeah, knew to be true, certainly from my own experience. I would go into places and not feel right in a place, but I couldn't find the language, to, you know, because there is no language for that. It's our bit, you know, if you meet someone and they say, oh, what do you think of so-and-so? You go, I don't know, I've just got a feeling about it.
Just something wasn't right.
Because
I don't know
in your
what it was.
brain, there isn't a linguistic part in your brain that actually gives language to those feelings, right? I mean, science can tell us that. So I found this body of knowledge that had been around, you know, for 4,000 years in China, suddenly made sense. And it was really, you know, any of that stuff is very complex. You know, it's got 4,000 years of development, and it's a big subject when you scratch into it.
So before we go any further, I think we need to really explain to our audience what is Feng Shui, because some of our audience may think they know what Feng Shui is, because even with me and my business, I find that people just think I go in and just make furniture look really pretty. And sometimes I do. I just go in and make it look really pretty. And
that helps.
And it helps, right? Because that's the first thing is the visual cue to make you feel good. But it's deeper than that. So how can we explain to our audience in really simple terms, something that's a very complex question, what is Feng Shui?
Okay. Well, I think in 2 words, it's just energy management, if you really want to strip it down. And when we say energy, from the traditional Chinese perspective, we're talking about qi, the life force, this mysterious life force. And in fact, qi, this whole concept of energy in the Chinese, it's the hardest word to translate from Chinese into a Western understanding, because it's so rich and complex.
We don't have anything.
We don't really have a word. So our best version of that is energy. But there's a lot more to it than energy.
It's way deeper.
yeah, it's deeper than that. So for the purpose of this conversation, we'll talk about energy.
Okay.
So it's about how can we arrange these energies, these natural energy, because there's natural energy in the environment. You go to the seaside, you can feel a very different energy to if you went up into the mountains. It's a very different, you know, there's different atmosphere, all sorts of different temperature, all, you know, altitude, everything's different. Ions in the air. And just, it's all there in nature. Go into the middle of the forest, it feels really different. But if you just go up and down High Street here, it changes in other ways that are kind of subtler, they're not so obvious. So Feng Shui is about tapping into that environmental atmosphere, that environmental energy, and figuring out if it's helpful or a hindrance to what we want to be doing with our lives. And when I say that, I mean, does it help our health? Does it help our sense of progress in learning? Does it help our sense of well-being and prosperity? Does it help our relationships? So it really affects the way we think, feel, and behave, and our whole outlook on life. And so if we can consciously design environments that, when I say conscious, I mean with awareness of all of these energies around us, if we can consciously manage that, manipulate that, so it's to our advantage, so it helps us become the best version of ourselves, then why not do that?
Absolutely.
And the Chinese understood this thousands of years ago. They knew where to build houses and where not to build. And of course, in those days, we had the opportunity to put houses, you know.
We had a lot of options. There was a lot of land.
A lot of land.
There was a lot of open land.
Now, you know, land is a premium now. And so houses are being built all over the world where they should never really be built because the energy is not that strong for human habitation there. And so that's what keeps guys like me in business, having to go out and try and help those places to make them feel better.
Right.
So so in a nutshell, it's really managing the energy environment so it helps us have our own human experience in the best possible way that we can.
And so I want to talk about the notion of different kinds of feng shui, because it's something that I always get a question about when someone's calling me is they'll say, well, what kind of feng shui do you do? And I'm going, okay, you probably have a little bit of confusion. It's very confusing if you don't do it, so I have to go and explain that the different practices. So let's talk about the different kinds of feng shui, the schools of feng shui.
Okay. Well, feng shui, like I say, it's been around a long time. And so like anything that's come down through the ages, things get added on, things improve, there's new innovations, there are changes. So the very earliest form of feng shui in China, let's just go back to the origins for a minute, was what was called landscape feng shui or land form feng shui. And that was just simply observing the environment around you and looking at the hills, the valleys, the rivers, whatever was going on around you, and just realizing where the sweet spot was in that environment to dwell, to either put a home or a village or what may grow to become a bigger community, and that all of the environment was supporting that life in that place. So it's a bit like finding the best seat in the cinema, right? You come into this space, you look around, and you'll find it.
The one best vantage point, right?
Right, the best point for you. Okay, so so early feng shui was given was really influenced by just the form of the land, and that's why it's called land form or form school. And that was around for several thousand years. Now remember, we didn't have any artificial lighting in those days. We didn't have the sort of screens and distractions that we have. We had a black night sky. Well, it wasn't black, it was just lit up with stars. Okay?
Right.
And so, like anything, as soon as it goes dark, this other whole universe awakens, and it awakens you because you notice things every night you come out of your door, and this star that was here yesterday is now here, and is now here. And so they observed over a period of time, and I'm talking through generations, that what goes round comes round.
Karma.
Well, that's and so those ideas evolved from observing
it's all connected.
The big cosmos, And it just so happened to notice that when that star was here, maybe 60 years ago, certain things happened in the village. And then 60 years later, similar things happened in the village.
So there's a pattern formed.
And then, it happens once, it's a one-off. It happens twice, it's a coincidence. It happens 3 times, maybe there's a pattern. Maybe pay attention. And so when that gets passed down through generations, especially these big loops, these big cycles, and they get documented and recorded, it became what they called phenomenology. Things happened when this was over here. Then out of that, you could sense that maybe you could predict. You say, well, if this always happens, or something like this always happens over this period of time, then I wonder if it's going to happen again when it comes around. And so that's where the idea that looking at the energies in the cosmos had some kind of effect on what was happening on the surface of the earth. Not just to human beings, because obviously we were being affected by that, but also in terms of what was happening within the energies within the landscape. And so that was the earliest form of feng shui, and that was called and they used a compass to figure that out. Remember, the Chinese was a very advanced culture early on. They had way before us. They had gunpowder, they had rice, they had chopsticks, they had paper, they had printing, they had kung fu, they had all of these things that came to us, not really until at least 200 years ago. Kung fu came in the 70s, right? Everybody was kung fu fighting. And then interestingly, later on the back of that's when feng shui turned up. So when feng shui came into, certainly into the West, in the late 70s, early 80s, we sort of found we had to strip it down and simplify it because it was pretty complex,
right.
you know, especially, you know, when they were using the compass like this.
And this is a compass that
This
you
is
would...
called a Lopan compass, and this is, I call this my 2,000-year-old laptop, all right, because it's got all of the kind of, so much information in it that it is like carrying a laptop.
The details
around
on this are intense.
Yeah, and you can see in the center there's a compass in here, and then there are all these other references to other types of energy that come from certain angles of the compass, certain directions, and then other cosmological events that could be happening around it. So you can use this as a form of somewhat predicting what energy is going to do, and whether it's harmonious or whether there's a clash there. And if that happens to be your front door over there and there's a clash, then you can do something about that. You can make it more harmonious by using this. So this was the compass school of Feng Shui that came later. Then it shows up in the West, and we have to kind of strip it down and make it a bit simpler for Westerners to get their head around, because we don't even really understand Qi. We just want to feel better, okay? And we
don't really care, and even now, like, we don't care why we feel better.
No, my clients they don't really care how I do this. It's just like, can you make it better?
Fix it.
Yeah.
We're kind of instant gratification.
Sure. So, but you need to really know the depth of the practice in order to be able to get down into it. And so when it came here, so yes, then other styles of Feng Shui started to evolve, which had sort of Western sensibilities, Western ideas bolted into it. And of course, there's other traditions of Feng Shui type of understanding. In India, a very ancient culture again, there's Vastu Shastra, which is again looking at how the physical environment impacts human behavior. In the West, we have our own tradition of dowsing, geomancy, where we would dowse using dowsing rods like this. You would walk around across the landscape, trying to tune into this feeling of what was going on.
And we're going to get to this a little bit later, because I'm going to get you to dig into this a little bit more.
And this is feeling subtle forces in the landscape that we can feel through our body, and then it shows up in the way that we move with the rods and gives us information about what is unseen. You know, we can then tune into the feeling of a place. So all of this started to blend with Feng Shui. Then things like space clearing came into it. Space clearing, where people who were sensitive or psychics could go into a place, and if there was a spirit or some kind of energy in a building that didn't feel right, that could be cleared using those techniques. In the Native American tradition over here, there's a very rich tradition of that. In the Tibetan tradition, in the high Himalayas, again, a very strong tradition of orientating things in the right place. In Africa, they would use, if you were going to build a house over here, you would go dig up a termite's nest, put it on that location, and sit there for a couple of months and watch what the termites did. Now, if the termites picked up and moved off somewhere else, good, build a house.
Okay.
If they built this luxurious termite tower there,
let them have it and
you go. Let them have it, you go for another place.
Right.
In ancient Rome, they would do the same. They would graze cattle, sheep, across a piece of land where they were going to build a community.
Okay.
They'd do it for a long period of time. Then they would slaughter the sheep, open them up, and inspect the entrails of the sheep. They'd look at the organs, the internal organs of the sheep, to see what condition they were in, if they were healthy-looking organs, or if they were depleted or even cancerous or tumorous in some way. And if that would give them the information about whether that was a good piece of land to build on. So it's across all of these traditions. We would call it an ancient folk wisdom, but and a lot of people, modern science would kind of put that down. Oh, that's some sort of old fuddy-duddy. Yeah, we're past that. Science has the answer to everything. Well, it has the answer to a lot of things, but not everything. And there's a lot of accumulated wisdom. Because you think, how did we get here without science? How did humankind?
We did a lot, though.
How do we make it this far?
Right. It wasn't just dumb luck. I mean, there was a lot of knowledge.
We got better life expectancy and all of that stuff, better health and all of that nutrition, which is great. But we made it this far without some of these
this
stuff. And now we're at a really interesting time.
Right.
So I think that's, and so there's a lot of different approaches to Feng Shui.
So I want to kind of move into this idea of something you've kind of coined as being the modern Feng Shui method, because, and this is the reason why I provided the audience with the background of you, because I wanted to talk about that, because that really kind of transformed your way of looking at Feng Shui and applying it, and it's quite effective. I mean,
Okay, well, the modern Feng Shui method, I always had a problem with Feng Shui. Just the process, my own personal inner conflict. One, I was never comfortable being the expert, in that role. As I got, I've been doing this for 23 years now.
And we consider you an expert.
Right,
you don't allow us to say it to you. But
No. I'm a lifelong student, and whenever I go to a Feng Shui conference or, and I always go to the beginner's class. always go to the beginner's class, because one of my teachers said to me, always cultivate beginner's mind, because it always makes you curious, and you have to, it's so helpful to hear things in the most simplistic sense. We tend to overcomplicate a lot of things. So I'm a lifelong student. I'm always learning. The minute you position yourself as an expert, I think things get,
right.
Was it pride before a fall or
right.
whatever? You can get into trouble, I think.
Absolutely.
So, having done something for a long time, you accumulate a body of knowledge or a body of wisdom or understanding, and your practice is, you've developed a practice. The one problem I always had was that this is very subjective. Now, Feng Shui was always regarded as both, you'll see it defined in certain places as both the art and science of placement. So the art is, that's a feeling, it's a right brain, feeling, touchy-feely, I feel good about this, or I don't feel so good about this. Now the other side is a completely different creature. The science has to be empirical, you have to measure stuff, you have to figure things out. So it's a blending of measuring and calculation of what's going on up here and what's going on around here, then intuiting what to do about that. That's why they consider it the art and science of placement.
Right.
Now, I trained with a couple of real masters, Hong Kong masters, and I was still left with questions after even, Taoist lineage holding masters.
Right.
There was still this missing bit for me that never sat quite right. And it was about, how can I measure this? Because if you look at personal development, if you're working with a coach and you're trying to develop something, you're going to set a goal, and then you're going to have points of measurement to
until
know.
You reach,
if you're watching a basketball game doesn't really mean anything unless you're watching the scoreboard, right? You've got to watch the numbers for it to be exciting and engaging and meaningful.
Right.
And so in Feng Shui, I remember somebody said that to me, and I thought, we need to watch the number. How can we do this? So the modern Feng Shui method is actually about measurement. It's truly about bringing measurement into Feng Shui practice, because you can't change what you can't measure.
Right.
Like if I'm doing some coaching work, like we work together, we had to set some benchmarks on where you were going to be, and goals. It's a bit like being at school, a little bit.
It was,
like
right,
you have to.
It was accountability.
Yeah, accountability. That's right. You have to get to a place to know that you're there, not just think, I think I'm nearly there. And you have to have the numbers to be able to show that. So what I brought into Feng Shui was a way of measuring my client's energy before and after the event of applying Feng Shui to a property. So there's a way of measuring their vital life force. We get an absolute data point on that.
Right.
And we take them outside and we find a sweet spot in the environment, which is the most life-giving, supportive place, because the home might not be great.
Right.
So we go outside, we go to another place, and then we capture a feeling, because what you're thinking and feeling about yourself can make that measurement fluctuate. So we get you into a positive state on a really sweet part of a sweet energy spot in the landscape, and get the best measurement of you, the best version that we can get, on a scale of 0 to 1,000. So it's quite a fine graded scale. Then we come back into the house and we start testing around the environment, room by room by room, and we take a score of where you're at in each room. Then we've got this data point, this place that we can start from. And then we can start to build on that. And that's the measurement part. Now the art side of it, that's the science bit. And that's, by the way, and that measurement is done through kinesiology, through muscle testing. Okay, and so your body's going to tell me exactly how strong it is by the communication from your brain to your muscles in your body. By pressing on a muscle, we can find out exactly what's going to change in real time.
Right.
So I don't need any old charts or anything like this to figure that out. We've got it right here, right now, in this spot, how you're responding to this
And we
place.
did that yesterday.
Yeah, right,
We're going to show that footage a little bit later on in the show.
Yeah.
But you actually did some muscle testing with
Yeah.
me when we were assessing some areas of land.
Yeah, and you're a problem, you know that? Because your energy is so darn high, it's really hard to get a negative reading out of you.
Well, it's because of all my guests like you and all the work that you guys do on me.
So we do that, okay? We get this measurement, and then you start to intuit, and you can figure out through the compass measurement, through other Feng Shui techniques, what needs to shift and change. You make those changes, we come back and we measure you, and if things have been done correctly, you should be in a higher response rate to that. And then we can also measure that over a period of time as well. So, and the other bits of the modern Feng Shui method is we bring in other disciplines, not just Feng Shui, but I borrow a lot from NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which is the way our language shapes the way we think,
Right.
which shapes our perception of reality. So the more limited your language is, the more limited your experience of life is. So if you can have a richer language and a richer thought pattern experience, then we can reprogram stuff. This is inner Feng Shui,
Right.
which is the other bit of the modern Feng Shui method, is there's outer Feng Shui, what's going on out here, and then we've got the inner bit, is like, how do we rearrange what's going on in the inner furniture?
Right.
All right? So that's really what it is. So sorry there's no short answer
No,
for that.
no, but we
because,
need to-
because there is, you have to qualify it with the depth of the practice of what we really apply.
Right,
here.
and we need for them to understand that.
Sure.
Now, Will, you know I could not do an interview with you without talking about your work with the Dalai Lama, because this is huge, and you guys in Louisville are doing some pretty big things. So I'm going to let you tell our audience about your work there, because and we've got a picture there. If we could put that picture up and show Will with the Dalai Lama. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And we've got another picture too.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Let's tell them what this one is. This
Yeah.
is
Okay. Well, this is the Yum Center in Louisville. It's that 22,000 seater basketball arena, right down by the riverfront. And in 2013, I was part of a team of people. The local Buddhist center, Tibetan Buddhist center, invited the Dalai Lama to come to Louisville to bless their center, and he said yes. And he also said that he would be available for 3 days, which was like, great, well, we can have a big compassion festival now, we can do a big public event.
Right.
And so then all the kind of, the reality of that hits, like, oh my
gosh,
Lord,
like,
where are we going to
what
do
are we
it?
gonna do?
Yeah, where are we going to do it? How
What
are
have we
gonna,
done?
we need
Amazing.
a team of people. So it just so happened, again, this is Feng Shui, this is being in the right place at the right time, place and timing, and being surrounded with the right people, and how opportunities unfold. And it's been a lifelong dream of mine to meet the Dalai Lama,
Right.
and so finally it happens. It's really extraordinary. And I've always been very interested in Tibetan Buddhism. I think there's the idea of being able to wake up and become conscious and aware of oneself through mindfulness training is a great asset in our life. That goes a long way in helping us live less dramatic, more focused, balanced life.
Right.
And so who better to learn from than the master of
Seriously.
that, the Dalai Lama. So the opportunity to meet. So I was asked to create, they knew that I did Feng Shui, and I was asked to come up with a design, a concept for this Compassion Festival, which involved the logo for the event, which had the energy of the city and the Dalai Lama in it, and also to suddenly try and transform a basketball arena
Right.
into what would feel like a temple for a weekend.
And I'm sure at that point you have that, I call them hallelujah moments, where you realize, oh, I now know why I had all these other things in my past, why it's all coming. So you have the construction.
Yeah, it all comes
you
together.
know that it's like, oh gosh,
Yeah.
it all makes sense now. I see why I needed to know all this in order to work with
Well,
it.
actually, one of the big things in China, traditional China, is about luck. Feng Shui brings you luck. Good Feng Shui
Right.
will bring you luck. In this culture, we tend to think of luck as
But luck is different here.
it's sort of something random, like like you won the state lottery. It was a
Found a
random.
quarter, that was lucky.
Yeah. Really, what in traditional China, luck is something that you cultivate.
Right. And this is kind of Feng Shui in action. I mean, this is real world application
Sure.
of the principles of Feng Shui.
Yeah, that's when we bring it into as a way of using principles to live a life.
Right.
And if you've got an environment that physically supports that and you resonate with that too. And so it's all it's all around us.
Right.
And it's just a matter of choice and consciousness, and to be able to wake up to that, to catch ourselves when we're doing something kind of mindless on Facebook and go, actually or a comment that we might make or
Right.
something like that.
With no consequence, we think.
With no consequence or no outcome, and then to take responsibility for that. And well, is that the kind of world that I want to live in? And is it okay that I contribute to it in this way?
Sure.
So I think it's important. And so, because the internet, I do a lot of Feng Shui in the internet now. A website is an environment.
It is.
All right? And so when you go into the physical environment, particularly when I'm working with businesses, does that website represent the energy of the company? Is it congruent when you go to the website?
Do you feel the
Do
same
you
way
feel
when you
the
see
energy when
people?
you go into a place?
Right.
And so I do a lot of corporate branding now, not just corporate but business branding, where it's everything has got this beautiful flow, that goes through the way the logo
cohesion,
looks,
everything.
comes
Yeah.
together.
Perfect.
And there's big companies out there. People like Apple. You know, you go to the Apple store, they've got it. They know it.
They're really
absolutely
good at this.
know it.
Right.
Other companies, places like Whole Foods, they get it.
That's right.
Trader Joe's get it. You know, we can see it in big high street businesses.
Right.
That they get it, and so because they're successful, that's the other side of it. That has an inherent success in what they're doing.
And that's something we can measure.
We can measure that, of course. Their accounts department and their investors
Sure.
definitely need that measure. So,
Right,
so we need
right.
to focus on that. But so yeah, it's all of these different environments.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for talking with us today
You're most
on
welcome.
what is Feng Shui. If you stay tuned, next week you will see part 2 of our conversation with Will. We're going to focus in on geopathic stress and earth acupuncture. So you definitely want to stay tuned in order to get information about that, and make sure hit that subscribe button. And now it's your turn. Thanks for following me. Check out right here below the screen. It gives you information on how to submit your Wonder Why Wednesday questions on our Facebook page. So make sure and send those in, and you'll have a chance to win a lucky gift pack of Feng Shui gear. So, Sabrina Williams, you're our winner for today. You submitted a question to us, and your question on Wonder Why Wednesday was, I know that we shouldn't block windows or doors with furniture, so what's the best way to arrange in order to attract all the goodness we want to attract? So, Sabrina, you're exactly right. We never want to block doorways or windows with large pieces of furniture. Basically, as a rule of thumb, if you have a hard time moving around a space or area with too many items in it, like too much clutter or too much furniture, Chi is going to have exactly the same problem. If you can't move easily, Chi can't move easily either. So certainly always make sure that your furniture size is proportionate to the space that you're filling. Another tip I want you to make sure of is make sure that your patterns and your colors correspond with the use of that room. So for instance, if we are using a bedroom, bedroom should be for peacefulness, for sleep, for rest, relaxation. We don't want to have bold patterns and bright colors that's going to keep us awake. We want to try to incorporate things that's going to give you rest and peace and relaxation. So make sure to always keep an eye on those things. And finally, the best tip for attracting goodness in any space in your home is to make sure you actually like and enjoy the space and color that you have. What I mean by that is, if you apply the Bagua, and the Bagua tells you to use a certain color to enhance an element for that space, and you hate that color, don't use it, okay? There's other things you can do to enhance that element for that space. Color is not the only thing with dealing with Feng Shui. If you don't like the color, you're not gonna like the space, you're gonna have negative energy, no peacefulness. So anyway, that's your tip for how to attract all the goodness you want to attract in your home. I hope that helps. And as always, I want all of you to submit your questions on our Facebook page for our Wonder Why Wednesday. Thanks for following. Hold on, your DIY Designovation tip is up next. So today I'm going to talk with you about flower essences. Now, before we go any further, let's talk about what flower essences are and what they are not. Flower essences are herbal infusions made from the flowering part of plants, which uniquely addresses emotional and mental aspects of wellness. They have been around and in use since the 1930s. Flower essences are completely safe and have no known side effects or interactions with drugs or medications. They can be used by people of all ages and even animals, and because they offer energetic healing to us, they offer qualities that you cannot realize with chemical medications. Flower essences are not drugs. You can never overdose on them. They can neither be addictive nor habit-forming. And because they are not medications, flower essences can be used alongside with other healing modalities. It's very important to remember that essences do not replace medications prescribed to you by your physician, and you should never alter the use of your prescribed medicines without consulting your doctor first. Now, how do flower essences work within our bodies? Well, we all obviously have a physical body, right? Like that's your arms, that's your hands, your head, all that kind of good stuff. But as humans, we also have what's called a spiritual body, and that contains life force energy. Now, life force energy, according to which school you subscribe to, if it's Chinese medicine, it's going to be called Qi. If it's Ayurvedic or Indian medicine, it's called prana. No matter what you identify with, we're talking about that life force energy. The body also has a network of electrical impulses that keep us alive. It's how your heart continues to beat. Flower essences interact with our energy bodies, and they evoke specific qualities within us. They provide our electrical systems with information that can be energetically read and learned from. When we use flower essences, we fill our auras with the flower vibrations, and we release energy blockages that keep us from vibrating at our natural frequency. Pretty much anything you can think of that you may need help with can be assisted with the use of a flower essence. Whether your needs involve the mind, the body, or the spirit, there is a flower essence out there to help you. Now, today I brought my collection, or some of my collection of my flower essences. These are essences that I use not only personally, but I use them with my family, my friends, and in my practice. And flower essences can come in a variety of ways. They can come individually in these little dropper bottles with just one flower in it at a time. And the company gives you this really great, easy to read book manual that tells you if you read this flower, it'll tell you exactly what that essence can be used for and what you can expect out of it. So it's not like you have to learn this stuff, right? They make it easy. And these little droppers, you just open them up, you drop a couple drops under your tongue, or you can drop them in like a glass of water that you're going to drink and use them very easily. They also have blends that have specific qualities for that bottle. So for instance, this one is to empower positive purpose and passion. So to become very focused on whatever you're working on. This is a good blend of flower essences. And the great thing about flower essences, as I mentioned before, is they can be used with animals. And so here's a couple of the essences I regularly use even with my dog. And I'll have all of that information on my website for the companies that I certainly enjoy using on a regular basis. Now, you can work with as many essences as you feel called to work with at any given time. All right. Now, if you take more drops than you need, or you work with a flower essence that is not relevant to your situation, it will not do any harm. Your electrical system just simply ignores the information. Remember, everything in nature is about balance and moderation. Now, you may not notice an overnight change with flower essences, but if you were to journal about your feelings surrounding the issue you're trying to resolve with the flower essence, you may start to notice that you have a change in perspective, or the issue or the fear may just suddenly start to diminish and it becomes less intrusive. See, flower essences are about subtle changes, and changes are easier to handle when they're gradual. Remember, nature is always gentle. So make sure to check out our website at FengShui-It.com, and you'll find a list of some of my favorite flower essence companies. And this has been your DIY Designovation tip.